The night smelled of roses and silence. My name is Aisha, and tonight is my first night as someone's wife. The world outside has gone quiet, but inside me everything is loud. My heart beats like thunder, my hands are cold, my breath is trembling. I have dreamed of this moment for years, and now that it is here, I do not know what to do. Keep hearing the words of friends and cousins all mixed in my head. Some said the first night is beautiful, some said it is painful, some said you cry, some said you fall in love, and I do not know which story will become mine tonight. The room is glowing with soft lights, and red roses cover the bed like tiny secrets waiting to be told. The perfume in the air feels heavy, sweet, almost too sweet. I sit quietly with my eyes lowered, my fingers twisting the edge of my scarf as if it can protect me. Hear the door open slowly, a sound that makes my heart jumpy. Is here the man I married this morning, the man whose name I now carry, the man I barely know. I do not look up, I cannot. I feel his steps moving closer like gentle waves touching the shore for the first time. Every step is filled with a question. What will he do? What will he say? What will happen tonight? He sits beside me, and the silence grows deeper. I can feel his presence. But he does not touch me. He does not speak for a moment. And then his voice breaks the silence, soft and calm. Nisha, I know this is not easy. I will not rush you. I only want to talk tonight. Something inside me loosens, like a bird that was trapped suddenly. Finding air, his voice is kind, not hungry, not demanding, just warm, safe. I slowly turn my head and see him clearly for the first time. His smile is nervous, not strong. His eyes gentle, not wild. And in that moment, I realize maybe tonight is not about fear, maybe. It is about something else, something tender, something true. I take a deep breath and feel the world slow down, maybe. This night is not a test, maybe. It is the beginning of a story I never imagined. A story not written in fear, but in trust, and before a single word more is spoken, I already know this night will change everything. The room felt alive with silence. Every flicker of the candlelight made the shadows dance on the wall like quiet witnesses to something sacred. My hands were cold, resting on my lap, that my heart was burning with questions I wanted to ask, but could not find the courage to speak. He sat beside me, close enough for me to feel his warmth, but not close enough to cross the invisible line of my fear. I could feel his eyes watching me gently, not like a hunter looking at his prey, but like someone trying to understand the shape of my silence. Spoke again softly, slowly, as if afraid his voice might scare me. He said, Aisha, you must be tired today. Has been a long day. You have met so many people, smiled so many times, held back so many tears. I do not want you to pretend tonight. I just want you to breathe and know that you are safe here. His words moved through the air like soft music wrapping around me until the tightness in my chest began to ease. I nodded my head, slightly unable to speak, but grateful for his kindness. He smiled and handed me a glass of water. Our fingers brushed, and in that small accidental touch, something inside me shifted. I felt a spark of warmth travel up my arm. It was not passion, it was peace. It was the feeling of being seen, of being treated gently after a day full of noise and confusion. I sipped the water slowly, and he waited patiently, his eyes never demanding, his body language calm, as if he knew the storm inside me and was willing to wait until it passed. He began talking about small things, about how nervous he was during the wedding, how he had forgotten half the words of the vows, and how his cousin teased him for sweating so much. He laughed softly at his own mistakes, and that laugh broke something inside me, not a wall, but a distance. I found myself smiling too. Just a small, shy smile, but enough to change the air around us. It no longer felt heavy. It began to feel like home. He told me about his mother, how she had told him to always be gentle with his wife, how she said love is not proven in one night, but in every day that follows. He said he wanted to build something real, something strong, something that did not need to be rushed. And as he spoke, I realized that my fears had come from stories told by others, but not every story is the same. Not every night is filled with pain and confusion. Some nights are filled with patience and care. I looked at him properly for the first time, his face calm, his eyes kind, his hands resting loosely on his knees, as if waiting for permission to move. He was not the monster of my imagination. He was not the stranger. I feared he was just a man trying to make me feel safe, and in that moment I felt something I had not expected: respect. He asked me softly if he could hold my hand. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. He reached out and took my hand gently, his touch warm, not heavy, his fingers wrapping around mine like a promise. He did not squeeze, he did not pull, he just held, and in that stillness my heart began to beat differently, not like a drum of fear, but like a song of hope. I looked down at our hands joined together and felt tears fill my eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. He noticed and asked softly, "Why are you crying, Aisha?" And I whispered, "I do not know, maybe because I was scared, and now I am not." He smiled again and said, "That is all I wanted tonight, for you to not be scared anymore." He lifted his other hand and touched my face, lightly wiping away the tears with his thumb. The warmth of his skin against my cheek felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. I closed my eyes for a second, letting that comfort sink in. I had never been touched like that, not as a demand, not as a right, but as a kindness. He told me about his own fears, how he too had worried about tonight, how he wanted to do everything right, how he wanted our story to begin with peace and not pressure. And hearing that made me realize that marriage is not just a woman's fear, it is also a man's hope. We kept talking. He asked about my dreams. About what I wanted to do, about my favorite food, my favorite color, my childhood memories, and with every question he built a bridge from his world to mine, and slowly I crossed it. My voice grew steadier, my smile less shy. I told him about the stories my grandmother used to tell me, about the festivals in my town, about how I loved to write small poems. He listened to everything carefully, his eyes never wandering, his attention full. In real hours passed without us, noticing the night grew deeper, the candles shorter, but inside the room the light did not fade. It lived between us, glowing softly in the space where fear used to be. He leaned back against the bed and sighed like someone finally finding rest, and I felt the same. He asked me if I was comfortable, if I needed anything, if I wanted to sleep. I shook my head. I wanted to stay awake, just a little longer in this new feeling of safety. He leaned closer, very slowly, watching my face for any sign of discomfort. When I did not move away, he whispered, "May I kiss your forehead?" I nodded, and he placed a gentle kiss there, a kiss so soft that it felt like a blessing, not a demand. And for the first time that day, I felt completely calm. We lay side by side, not touching more than our hands, still joined, the sound of his breathing steady beside me, the rhythm of his heart clear under my ear. And I thought, maybe love is not loud. Maybe it begins quietly in a room filled with patience and understanding. Whispered good night, Aisha, and I whispered good night too. And in that quiet darkness, I felt my fears melt away, replaced by a warmth that reached deeper than I had ever known. That night, nothing needed to be perfect. Nothing needed to be rushed. It was not about proving love. It was about learning it one heartbeat at a time. The morning light entered the room softly like golden threads, weaving through the curtains, touching everything with a gentle warmth. I opened my eyes, slowly feeling the weight of his arms still resting lightly over me, the rhythm of his breathing calm and steady, like a promise whispered in sleep. For a moment, I just lay there, listening to the quiet, the kind of quiet that does not feel empty, but full of peace, full of safety, full of a new beginning. I turned my head slightly and saw his face half hidden in the pillow, his lashes resting on his cheeks, his mouth curved into the faintest smile. He looked younger in sleep, softer, like a boy not yet burdened by the world. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. This man who could have claimed me last night had chosen instead to comfort me, to understand me, and that choice had changed everything inside. May remembered the stories I had heard, the warnings, the fears, the voices that told me marriage begins with surrender. But last night had shown me that true love begins with kindness, with patience, with respect, and I felt something bloom quietly in my chest, something warm and glowing like a flower opening to the sunny. Moved gently, trying not to wake him, and sat. Up on the bed, the room still smelled of roses, but now the scent felt different. Not heavy, not nervous, but sweet and calm the way new beginnings often smell. I looked at my hands, remembering how he had held them so carefully as if they were something precious, and my heart filled with gratitude. After a while, he stirred, opening his eyes, slowly blinking at the light when he saw me awake. He smiled that same shy smile that had broken my fear last night, and said softly, "Good morning, Issy, did you sleep well?" I nodded and whispered, "Yes, better than I expected." "And you?" He laughed quietly and said I slept peacefully because I knew you were not afraid anymore. He sat up beside me, stretching his arms, and then looked at me, carefully asking if I wanted breakfast, if I wanted to freshen up, if I was feeling all right. Every question gentle, every word thoughtful. He did not treat me like a stranger. He treated me like a companion, someone whose comfort mattered, and that made my eyes sting with emotion again. We shared breakfast together, sitting on the floor with a tray between us, simple food, bread, milk, fruits. But it felt like a feast because for the first time, I felt truly seen. He asked about my favorite dishes, promised to learn how to cook them, told me stories of his childhood, of climbing mango trees and getting scolded by his mother, and I laughed, softly imagining it, the tension that once filled the space between us now replaced by light and laughter. After breakfast, he showed me around the house, introducing me to the corners that held memories, his bookshelf, his small garden, the old photo on the wall of his parents smiling together. He said, "I want this house to be yours too, not a place you live in, but a place you belong to." And those words wrapped around my heart like a warm shawl throughout the day. He never left me alone for too long, but never hovered either. He gave me space when I needed it and presence when I sought it. He noticed small things, the way I looked at the flowers, the way I touched the curtains. He asked gentle questions about my past, about my favorite songs, about the dreams I had as a child, and listened with full attention, as if each word I spoke was a story worth remembering. As the sun began to lower, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold, we sat together on the balcony, a quiet breeze brushing our faces. He turned to me and said, "Aisha, I know yesterday was your first night, and it will always stay special, but I want every day to feel special, not just one night. I want to learn you, to understand you, to walk beside you, not ahead of you, not behind you." I felt tears rise again, not from sadness, but from the weight of his sincerity. I whispered, "You are different from what I expected," and he asked softly, "Is that a good thing?" I nodded my head and said, "Yes, very good." Evening grew deeper, and with it grew a comfort between us like two rivers, slowly meeting, finding a shared path. He took my hand again, but this time it did not tremble. It rested easily in his, as if it had always belonged there. We spoke less and felt more. The silence no longer awkward, but peaceful, filled with unspoken understanding. Later that night, as we prepared to sleep, he looked at me and said, "Aisha, I want you to know something. Love is not proven in one night. It is built every day in every word and every touch, and I want to build it with you, slowly, beautifully, truly." I felt my heart swell with something I could now name trust. When we lay down again, side by side, I placed my head on his chest willingly, this time listening to the steady beat that felt like the rhythm of a promise. I whispered, "Thank you," and he asked for what I said, for making me feel safe, for giving me time, for seeing me not just as a wife, but as a person. He smiled in the dark and whispered, "Always, Aisha, always." And as sleep slowly covered us, I realized the girl who had walked into this house full of fear was no longer the same. She was now a woman who had found respect, love, and peace in a place she once feared. That night, I did not dream of unknowns. I dreamed of tomorrows filled with quiet laughter, gentle mornings, shared meals, and endless conversations. I dreamed of a life built not on fear, but on care, and I knew deep within me that our story had only just begun. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, yet every morning still felt like that first one soft light through the curtains, gentle warmth on my face, and his voice greeting me with kindness every day. He found small ways to make me smile, leaving a flower on my pillow, writing small notes that said, "You are precious," cooking breakfast on mornings when I was tired, bringing me tea when I was quiet. He never forgot the promises he made on our first night. He never rushed. He never demanded. He simply stayed patient and present. I began to notice how love grows, not like a fire that burns fast, but like a seed that needs water, care, and time. Each day was a drop of that water, each word a ray of sunlight, each act of kindness a root growing deeper into the soil of trust. We shared laughter over silly things, burned dinners, messy rooms, forgotten keys. We learned to forgive quickly, to speak gently, even when angry, to listen before reacting. He told me that love is not about winning arguments, but about holding hearts carefully, and I learned that he was right. When I fell sick one winter, he stayed awake all night, sitting by my side, holding a cloth to my forehead. Whispering prayers under his breath, he refused to sleep until my fever broke. And when I opened my eyes in the middle of the night, I saw him watching me with worry and tenderness, and in that moment, I knew I was not just loved, I was cherished. There were hard days, 2 days, when misunderstandings came, days when silence grew heavy, but even then he never let distance win. He would sit beside me, quietly waiting until I was ready to speak. He would say, "Aisha, we promised to walk together, not apart. Let us find our way again." And we always did. One evening, as the rain tapped softly against the window, he held my hand and said, "Do you remember our first night?" And I smiled, "Yes. I remember the fear, the trembling, the silence." And he said, "And now look at us. The fear is gone, replaced by peace. The trembling has turned into strength, the silence into understanding." And we both laughed softly, knowing how far we had come. We began to dream together, dreams of building a home filled with warmth, dreams of traveling to new places, dreams of raising children who would know love, not fear. He said he wanted our children to learn that strength comes from kindness, that respect is the foundation of every bond. Sometimes at night, we would sit on the roof watching the stars, and he would tell me stories from his childhood, his mistakes, his lessons, his hopes, and I would listen, feeling lucky that he trusted me with his truths. He often said, "A real love is not made of grand gestures. It is built in small moments like these, quiet, honest, real." And I would think back to that shy girl who sat trembling on the edge of a bed surrounded by roses, and realize how much she had changed, how much she had grown. I have learned that true love is not about one night. It is about every day that follows. It is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is not about control. It is about care. Years passed and our hair grew a little grayer, our laughter a little deeper, our hearts a little stronger. Yet the magic never faded, because it was never built on illusion. It was built on truth. One evening, as we walked through the garden hand in hand, he stopped and said, "Thank you, Aisha, for trusting me, for walking with me, for choosing love over fear." And I smiled with tears in my eyes and said, "Thank you for teaching me that love can be gentle, that it can heal what fear once broke." Now, when I meet young brides, I tell them your first night is not a test. It is a beginning. It should not be filled with fear, but with faith, not with pressure, but with patience, not with demands, but with understanding. It is not about proving anything. It is about building something real. And to the men I say, be her safety, not her fear. Be her peace, not her pressure. Hold her hand before you hold her body. Listen to her silence before you seek her words, because love that begins with respect will last a lifetime. When I look back, I do not remember the decorations or the rituals. I remember his voice whispering, "You are safe." I remember his patience, his laughter, his gentle hands. I remember How love walked quietly into the room and stayed our story is not a fairy tale with castles or crowns. It is a story of two ordinary hearts choosing kindness every day. And in that choice, we found something extraordinary. So if you ask me what my first night taught me, I will say it taught me that love is not about possession. It is about presence, not about desire. It is about devotion, not about rushing. It is about resting in trust that night did not just begin our marriage, it began our journey. As partners, as friends, as souls walking together through every season, and even now, after all these years. When he looks at me with that same gentle smile, I still feel the warmth of that first night, when fear turned into faith and silence turned into love.